All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second Delegates Office Hours. Thomas Footer with GovComms. Thank you all for joining us. For today's meeting, I would put a poll out, a quick poll, probably the quickest poll that you may have seen. But we did come up with one item for this, well, actually two items for discussion. But I think one of them, especially talking about offboarding. Core unit offboarding. There's a lot of activity going on with that. And so I think that would be a great topic for discussion today. We also had the Maker Constitution came in as a tie. So we may just use that for maybe next week's conversation, because the GNR call discussion will be on offboarding core units. So I know a lot of activity going on. So I think it will be good for today. So again, thank you for joining us. And again, we could talk about the offboarding of the 3 core units that are out there right now. And if you want have any other topics for discussion, please feel free to open up for raise your hand or unmute. But we hopefully will have a good level set conversation today and not get hijacked like we did last week. So that said, oh, look at that. Josh, got your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. We've been working on this kind of explanation. I'm just going to post in the chat, Google Doc, and there's just a few things to finalize here, and then I'm going to be posting this on the forums too, but currently it's like in draft mode and we're just tweaking things. But yeah, so the bottom line is, well, I'll just go through it real quick. So Immunify services, we were using them for a few different things, and probably the triaging of the bug bounties, the bug reports is kind of the thing we'd like to keep them for, but we can just defer that and just receive no service from them first for a month. We'll see how that goes, and then we could even continue that, and then I'll just be doing triaging as best I can, and if I can't figure out the bug, then I'll just escalate to our either Ducks or PE. And the reason we want to triage bug reports before we escalate them is because our PE and Ducks teams are highly paid. So if we can screen them out with people like me who don't have a huge salary, then that's better. Then we can save the time for people who are really highly compensated and have important work to do. In terms of Chaos Labs, we had a budget to collaborate them. Of course, we haven't spent any yet because they haven't been ready to. Their product hasn't been ready. They've been developing it, and they posted on the forums recently that they're getting closer. So yeah, we have $54,000 in the budget for doing grants and stuff. So we'll just keep that kind of in the back pocket, but we're not going to spend that until we come back to maker holders and get that approved. Like we'll have some kind of grants program and maybe go through a MIPS process or at least a signal request and make sure that maker holders actually want to go forward with that before we spend that money. In terms of DeFi safety, we did contract with them back in the beginning of our core unit, and we received some internal documentation that we've been using, but that was we kind of haven't had any further collaboration with them, so we only spent about $5,000. So it's in our budget, but we're not using that money. And we don't have any plans to use that money. There's going to be a call with DeFi Safety next week, and that's just that was initiated from their side, and so that's not that call does not reflect like some new collaboration with them. But we could, let's see, much new, blah blah blah. So did we? I don't know. I'd have to read it more carefully to see whether we're. Oh no, I guess we're. It's still in our budget. We're just not spending that money. Let's see. And in terms of chain security, it's kind of the same thing. Like we would only call on them if protocol engineering asked us to. So we're not. It's in our budget, but we're not spending that money. Let's see. And then in terms of my compensation, I'm just going to cut a day a week, like so go from 5 days a week to 4 days a week. That I mean that doesn't mean I have like 2 or 3 days a week off, completely. Like I'm going to distribute my hours across the week, so I just work fewer hours, but because bugs could come in any time. So I need to be available to look at bugs, or if I'm on vacation or something, I'll just give it a cursory look and then escalate it, because I may not have time to review a bug carefully when I'm on vacation, so I'd just be passing it up the food chain. But I'll do my best, and I think I can complete most of my responsibilities without too much loss in like what is it, a service level. So that, my response times may be a little slower in some cases, but I think I can cover most of this stuff since I've had a lot of practice over the last 6 months. And Traven is willing to kind of
looks like he's lowering his salary. Yeah, this is super informative, man. Glad you came on. Can we start from the top though? Because you mentioned that some of the services your core unit and Immunify is going to reduce with these budget cuts you guys are proposing, and I really appreciate. I think a lot of the delegates here, especially from the hawkish side, probably want to see this happen. So thank you for bringing this up. But so are you saying that the postmortem is going to be pretty much on the core units? Maybe PECU or someone like Risk or CES would have to do the write-up of any high and critical vulnerabilities. And then I believe you mentioned on this document the operational audit.
Oh, hold on, Frank. It's the main difference is the high severity vulnerabilities. So the critical vulnerabilities will still receive write up from Immunify, because that's like a free part of their service. So we'll still benefit from that. But we had also contracted with them to write up the high severity vulnerabilities, and that will not be done by them automatically. So yeah, it'll be on our core units to do a write up if they want to. Please continue though. What you're asking, another question?
No, I just want to get clarification. But so the reduction is pretty much going to lead to just, as you wrote here, standard free, as you mentioned, write-ups of the vulnerabilities, and yeah, so you're cutting down a lot, huh? It seems that way, reducing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that was our goal, and so I hope you you see it that way.
And let me add to this. I know we're talking about the future, but how did we get to this point? Just recently, the posts came out on the forum from a community member who said that issued the facilitator offboard and the modified budget, which both of those together say offboarding core unit. It was particular was IS event and 3 of them. Strategic happiness. But Josh, thank you for filling us in, but I just want to let everybody know that the post came out just recently, and I'm sure folks have seen it. If not, it's out there and being talked about.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. I just want to point out one little addendum on that is that our core unit was already contemplating reducing services in our June update before that offboarding proposal came through. So we were already like trying to be proactive in reducing our budget. Yeah, so I just wanted to point that out.
And I know, Tim, you've got your hand raised, but I do want to add, Josh, that the updates those are very good. It's good information. It's showing, it's written documentation of, here's what our core unit's been doing, is doing, and look for the future. And I'm glad you guys were able to, if you haven't had a chance to look at the updates that are out there on the forum that people are spending a lot of their time on to at least provide what they're doing, it does help. And so I know you guys have put together something which is good. And I'll go back to Josh, and Tim's got your hand raised. So, Josh, you want to make a comment on that? I was just adding that for context.
No, please continue. I'll just post the June update in the chat just so that it's easy to refer to. But
okay. Thank you. All right, I'll go over to Tim. You got your hand raised. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for being proactive about this. I'm a bit unsure if you're overshooting, to be honest. But in a more general sense, I think it's essentially one of the big things of a facilitator to actually be proactive about if we can cut on budgets, then we should do that and not wait for someone else to do the offboarding or whatever. I'm not saying this is some kind of reaction to the offboarding proposal, not at all. So I totally ignore the offboarding proposal and just look at this one. So just one question. So this is essentially, I mean, this is called the Immunify core unit, right? So Immunify is pretty much cut down, right? It's just one of a couple of external service providers that you're taking here, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're basically on a they'll be paid on a per bounty basis, as we described in the onboarding. So they have like a 10% fee when a bug is found and a bounty is paid.
Yeah. So again, thank you very much for being proactive about this. I need to go more into detail and think about this in a more general sense. I think what we are going to face over time is that we run into engineering boredom problems. So there is budget, and the amount of work that needs to be done is shrinking because at some point of time, mission is complete. So you're actively, and I'm an engineer, so I know that, you're looking out for new things to work on. And the risk I see in a general sense is that without having a proper mandate on actually doing that, you just pick up that stuff without actually asking if this is needed or not. So this is probably not applying to your proposal, not at all. But I think that's something we need to be aware of, that if money is there to spend, the money is going to be spent, regardless if the work that is, or the value that we generate out of that is actually contributing to the mandate. So I think that's something. I mean, I just saw this in the I don't know. There was a thread about SideStream asking, hey, are you doing smart contract stuff or not, or are you just doing UI stuff or not? And not saying that this is actually a symptom of board engineer problem, but yeah, this is at least something we need to actively look out as a community to avoid this being to happen. So, because if we face engineering boredom, then I think the facilitator at least should make the call on being proactive about this and saying, hey, we are running out of, the backlog is shrinking. Shall we reduce the scope, and by that, or shall we reduce the budget, or shall we pick up something else? I have options A, B, C here. And if this is not happening, then we clearly have a problem. And this will ultimately lead to others putting up offboarding proposals, which we probably want to avoid. So that's, yeah, I don't know. That's just my thoughts about this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you, Tim, for that. Yeah, we've gone through this before, offboarding once. I mean, it was MKT, and now it's this. There's three. I mean, there's three completely different offboarding proposals to offboard the core unit, not just facilitator, modify the budget. They're motivated by saying that there isn't a need for the core units, or I don't know. It's just interesting, the influx of all this, and I do appreciate Josh coming out here and talking to us. That's really good. That was my 2 cents. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Me,
I raised my hand, but I guess
sorry,
Frank can
Tim.
go.
No, I'm so rude.
Tim,
No, I'm extremely rude. I'm sorry. I'm so rude. Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Extroverts, man, they're the worst. We're the worst. You know, in another office hours, like the two Tims can battle it out over engineering versus product management philosophies, but this is not the time for that. For offboarding, I would say that it's funny that there's 3 offboardings up and the MIP to revise offboarding hasn't gone through. So I wanted to take personal responsibility for that and put a plug in that there is still some RFC there, but I think that that's gotten pretty good. What is a little troubling is that these offboardings are kind of really not based on anything objective, which kind of echoes Tim's point in general. You know, like in an ideal world, we would say like, okay, how much are we spending on these bug bounties? Are they mostly critical or are they not? Are they mostly front end or are they smart contracts? Do we have the coverage we need? Sort of that holistic evaluation of it. But instead, it's just sort of like, oh, this is a place we can like cut, you know, which is usually not the best place to come from. So that's a little bit worrying. So this is my call to just say, hopefully, as we go through these offboardings, we start to think more holistically from the MIP that's in progress, which is actually evaluating with the core unit together to say, hey, how can we be proactive about this to meet the market where it's at? Because realistically, like Maker is one of those things, it's permissionless, right? So that makes our revenue relatively hard to control. And thus, as a result, it's really hard to see the value. I think there's so much work going into things behind the scenes that are, I mean, well, not behind the scenes, they're relatively transparent from SES to make this much clearer for your average layman who isn't paying attention like delegates are, or your average core unit person who's in it day to day. But yeah, I would say that cutting for the sake of cutting sake because you don't like something is not necessarily the best decision long term, and mostly it just leads to people not wanting to work here, which, you know, rounds the whole thing out. In general, there will be nothing to work on because there's no one who wants to stay. And so hopefully we can start to be a little bit more objective. But to round this out and finish it out, sorry for talking so much, I would just echo what Tim said and say being proactive about recognizing that we need to all pull our bootstraps up is pretty important. Otherwise we won't be here. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of this. I think it's a really healthy thing to do, to try and cut where you can and just be honest about what you're doing. And so thanks, Joshua, for coming in and showing us what you guys have done. I think it's really important. So appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. Raphael, you got your hand raised? You like you're out outside?
I think Frank should be first, right? He was
oh yeah,
just
Frank was first. Sorry.
No?
Sorry.
No, I
and
just, yeah, it's actually
Yeah,
what Tim was. Yeah, thank you, Raphael. Sorry about that, Tim and Raphael. So it was actually Tim Schuppener and I had spoken about this, and we spoke about like merging some of these teams together, right? So I don't know where Immunify can merge with. I guess if I had to take a quick guess, it would be protocol engineering. But you know, I also wanted to ask Josh, and Josh, I don't want to like, you know, for you to take up like, and apologies for this, don't take up like too much time on this, but you mentioned in this write-up that the white hat hacker would have less interest if Chaos Labs allows a lot of the innovation that they're trying to bring to MakerDAO, right, with the agent-based simulation. So can you expand that real quickly, but without taking too much time? There's a lot of people on this call.
Yeah, thanks, Frank, for that's a really good question. Yeah, I'm really happy to answer that because like I see Chaos Labs as a really important piece of, or potentially an important piece of the bug bounty program, because these white hat bug hunters, like they don't want to spend huge amount of time trying to understand how to set up all the components of the maker system so they have a proper test environment, so they can test some scenario that isn't what's currently happening on mainnet. Like I'm sure it would be much more convenient for them to be able to spin up a whole maker environment and and try stuff out and push at the edges. And they could even if we had more users using the Chaos Labs offerings, they may even ask for different market scenarios that we hadn't even thought of testing. Like that kind of input from the white hat hackers could improve the what risk could even explore in thinking about different unlikely events that could happen in the market. And so I'm very much in favor of onboarding, or of Maker bringing Chaos Labs on board somehow, either as a coordinator or as a contractor. But I think they would be really complementary to the bug bounty program.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much for that. And I know we have some of our hawkish friends here who might have a different view on that. So I really appreciate your view on that. And without further ado, Raphael, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Frank. Awesome. So yeah, I think just what bothers me a little bit about these offboarding proposals, or like, we want to see budgetary discipline clearly, but what does budgetary discipline really mean? I mean, it means, for me, it means spending on the right things and not on the wrong things. And the issue is at the moment is that we have no basis to decide what the right things are. I mean, there's like obvious ways, okay? But then like a lot of these things are like, will it pay off in 5 years or not? Okay, we first need to decide where we want to be in 5 years to even have this discussion. And I think that kind of ties back to this urgency of really setting the priorities of where the DAO wants to go, because without that, we're operating in the total dark, and then we can say, yeah, we want to cut, and go back to a very reduced form of Maker. But is that like the optimal? And I think it's just like an emergency fallback, and it's kind of good to have that. But we need to have this discussion of where we want to go first, and then spend accordingly.
All right, thank you, Raphael. Appreciate the comments.
Yeah, to that point, I'll just add, there's a lot of conversations and new discords and these things going on about the sort of structure of MakerDAO. I think because humans, no matter how flat you want to say your organization is, leaders emerge and hierarchies develop, right? Just what happens. A little bit more into the idea of clustering. I actually think the structure part leads to what Raphael's point is, which is that we need to be thinking of like the functions of this grouping of people, however you want to go into. And one function we are sorely missing is a strategy function, which is like every 6 months, a crew of people representing all of these different stakeholders and some of these different teams comes together for a week and thinks through what our next focuses are for this period of time. You know, these are some of the rough edges of something I've been working on personally, because I really would like to see us start to think this through. I think essentially that's kind of a little bit derivative of Hasu's council idea, but just at the functional level, like, you know, not really like the people and the structure and controls, more like the output. What are we coming together to do? What are the focuses and how do we bring that out? So hoping to work on that a little bit more as I start to ramp myself back into things post vacation, but it's definitely not easy, right? It sounds better at a higher level. Like when you put it into the people part, it starts to get complex. But I'm pretty positive that we have the minds here on the forum, in the calls around the interstitial community, and even surrounding Maker to actually start to put that together. And I think those functions would be pretty helpful. So, my 2 cents there.
Yeah, and I think, Tim, to your point, it's interesting, like the events core unit offboarding proposal, you know, they were just ratified a couple of months ago, you know, and the Divinity event, they were posting out, you know, their updates. Here's our 12-month view of events that we're going to be, you know, and so did we give them enough time? You know, you get ratified, but then they turn right back around immediately and say, well, we don't need an event because of the economy, right? And so we need to offboard because of that. And it's so that's difficult, you know, for someone to come on board and do what they say, and then turn around and Tim, you were nodding your head when I was saying that. So I just wanted to point that out for events. So.
Yeah, so the way offboarding works, and I guess it's okay that it works that way right now, is that basically everybody could come up and propose an offboarding. That doesn't mean that there is majority for the offboarding. Just because there's noise on the forum, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Does it send a bad signal to the outside? Oh yes, for sure it does. So yeah, that's a big deficit of the current system. But yeah, honestly, just coming to the events thing, I will for sure not support the offboarding proposal, because it's not that much money for the bang we get. And it's, well, if you compare the Paris event we had last year with the Divinity event we had in Denver, that's not even different league, it's a different game that we are playing there. It's totally worth the effort, totally worth the budget to do that. And I mean, it's not that I'm an expert on how much events should cost, right? But I just pulled some numbers for the company I'm working for, and it's actually not that much money. And the stuff they are putting up is really high quality stuff. And I totally agree that also looking from the perspective of we just onboarded them, we shouldn't offboard them right now. It's nonsense. We just decided that we want to have them. We should give them some room and maybe put up some KPIs and yada, 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 all that stuff. Fine, I'm not a big fan of that, but probably it's a good approach to do that. But again, just because somebody is proposing to offboard them and there's tons of people on the forum saying, yeah, we need to offboard them, that doesn't mean that there is support, not from MTR holders. That's just one of the realities we're facing, that the forum is not reflecting one-to-one what we have on chain.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that comment, absolutely. Raphael, I think you next had your hand raised.
Yeah, just want to second that, Tim, because like with the events, it's just like, it's so clear, and it's like the last 2 years were just the same. The first thing you want to like cut when there's a problem is anything that's related to fun, because fun can never be good, right? It's like, no, as long as we're serious, we have a higher chance. Okay, but leaving this philosophical discussion aside, I think, yeah, I just want to like reiterate to the point, where do we want to go? Like, what's the position of Maker? Does the vision of Maker entail a marketing function that has events or not? If we don't do events, do we have a content publishing arm or whatever? But like, without the strategy, I think we're just groping in a muddy, lake and trying to fish out some nuggets. And who knows? I mean, there's this old German saying of the blind chicken who finds a corn once a day. But I'd rather we get a little bit more targeted here.
Am I next?
Thank you. Yes, Paper has the floor.
Yeah, so I mean, I think events is very different from like, say, the Immunify situation, where like I feel it's reasonable to seek like some kind of compromise, like with budget reduction, because Immunify, I think most people would say delivers something. So I think that I was not in favor of events at the beginning when it was onboarded. I'm not in favor of it now. Do I think that even without changing the costs, could they change my personal opinion? I think so. But the focus has repeatedly been upon social events that are not related to business development, not related to recruitment of talent, like not related to education of potential users. I mean, I think if they had done events and not been parties, and I think there's still the potential to make that pivot and stop throwing divinities and with free booze for people who we don't know who they are, and start throwing hackathons or educational outreaches or all kinds of creative stuff that could be done. And I think that's the problem, is that we've had several months and the engagement from the beginning was, no, it's going to be parties. We're not going to track who goes, and we don't have to be measured by any metrics. That's my position.
Thank you, Maker. Appreciate that. And I saw some of those comments in the forum as well when I was doing the research. Yeah, I appreciate it. In fact, there was another comment in the chat. I think Dude was talking about calculating impacts, and not until the offboarding proposal they started scrambling for that data. I've got a bunch of hands raised. I think I'll try to get to the right order. Should I go Frank, Tim, Black? Any, many, money, money. Let's go with Frank.
No.
It sounds like a winner. A winning combination there. All right, Paper, here we go. A rebuttal to Paper's comments. So yeah, a few points that I disagree with. So first of all, there are a lot of people that I've actually, all right, I'm not going to say a lot. I'm going to say there are some people that I've met at these events that are actually interested in MakerDAO. And a lot of times you'll get their Telegram, and then they'll, send you a DM like a week later after the conference is over, and they're like, hey, is Maker doing this? Is Maker looking to do this with so-and-so platform? Do you have, I've even had, I've connected and some of the people from SES, Growth Core Unit can tell you, I've tried to connect them. I don't know if any of them have gotten hired, but I've connected people who are interested to working for the DAO. And the way this happens is by going to these events, by going to this divinity event that we have, that sinks in the name divinity into their brains. I do agree with you, though, that we could be educating folks, right? You can't educate a folk on a nightclub, right? One of my best friends is actually one of the top promoters in New York City for one of these crazy nightclubs that I don't care to go anymore. But yeah, you could lose your hearing from being in one of these things every day, and that's actually what happened to him. So the point I'm trying to make, you're right about that. I agree with you there. We're not educating. Maybe some of that funding could go towards education. However, I will disagree with you in your final point, which was, golly, I think I already forgot it. Collecting emails, that's being done. I did one actually with David Yu, who helped me out. Thank you, David. If you remember, we did a little DAI thing for a charity that my sister runs and stuff on DAI education. What is DAI? What is MakerDAO? That was super awesome. And I got all their emails, right, from using Eventbrite. So I'm 100% sure that the two Johns from that core unit, events core unit, have a whole list of all the emails. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Paper, I know there's other folks here that want to talk, so I'll let Tim go. Tim Schuppener go next.
Thank you, Frank.
The handoff.
Yeah, just one thing. The events core unit is not about parties. It's about brand building. And we need to build the brand because, yeah, nobody knows that DAI is built by Maker. And we are still in the situation that we are far away from retail. So it's a very small ecosystem of builders out there, and they meet at those conferences. And fun thing is, those people like to attend parties. I personally don't go to conferences for the content, not at all. If there are two talks at the conference that are good, great. And I hope I make it to them. But it's not about the conference. It's about meeting people. So it's an ecosystem for builders to connect. So that's the whole point of it. it doesn't need to be a party, and we shouldn't label it as a party. It's something where we are building our brand. Enough of that. Next, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Tim Black, you're up.
Yes, I have some sort of orthogonal points to that. Like, I definitely respect that opinion, but I think to echo something we talked about earlier, when we're going to offboard things, or we're going to say that these points haven't been refuted on the forum, or that these things are missing, those are the opportunities, especially for delegates, to go and talk to these people. So before I went on vacation, I went and hung out with John and was like, what are the KPIs? Where are you struggling? How can we be helpful? We had a half an hour brainstorm. And then all of a sudden, what I saw is now they're actually doing POAPs. They're collecting emails through Eventbrite. And so I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between the information that is there, and they actually listened to some of the concerns that I was sort of highlighting, and they had already seen them and were sort of processing it. So I think there's an opportunity here for us to sort of synergize these points, condense them, and then bring them to core units in a collaborative environment, which is, I think, a little bit more powerful, in my opinion. And then to other Tim's point, it's really mercurial to onboard someone and offboard them 2 months later. That's just like super unreliable. Like, we shouldn't be doing that on principle. Like, even if we don't like it, like, we should be trying to push people towards a, hey, for 6 months, we tried to get you to actually show us what you're doing to bring in more DAO users, or to do educational events, or to sort of pivot what you're doing, and you're not doing it. And at this point, this is why this isn't working for the DAO or something. So I hope that that makes sense. But that's also a personal bias. Like, I like to be relentlessly collaborative. I have a little bit more time on my hands as a delegate to go and roll my sleeves up. Maybe that's wrong. That's fine.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. And I know we've talked about both IS and event. I do want to bring up, we got a third one. There's a third offboarding as well, and that's with strategic happiness. And I know folks' thoughts on Bourbon and everything that he's been working on, and trying to modify his budget as well, based on some of the comments too. So I wanted to open to see if anybody had any comments about strategic happiness and that core unit as well.
Yeah, I'll be an extrovert again, unless somebody else wants to go. But
yeah, Frank, can I actually here for a quick second?
Yeah, go ahead, David. Sorry.
Yeah, cool. Actually, I want to also report to you guys that, like, even in the mandated actors call, we are doing like thought exercises, like what does like a 10% cut look like? And that's actually slated for a short discussion on our next Tuesday's mandated actor call. Each core unit who is participating in the thought exercise is kind of saying like, hey, how do we cut 10%? And not off budget, but actually off like actuals. So I want you guys to know that even in the background, like, everybody is thinking about budget optimization, doing things wisely. So the question of like offboarding or not offboarding, yeah, like that's kind of like what's the best way to do things. But I want you guys to know that, yeah, internally we are all thinking about it, and even GovComms, as Thomas mentioned, has already been doing things to reduce our actuals.
Yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate it for that insight with the mandated actors. That's good. Yeah, and it's I do want to go back to see if anybody had any comments on strategic happiness as well. That core unit, is also under fire. I don't mean to use that. I shouldn't use that term necessarily, but they are also in the mix here as well. Does anyone have any comments on what? Frank, were you going to say so? You didn't know if you had any comments on strategic happiness.
Yeah, and I think under fire is a very good description, actually, Thomas. So I think we should just, as they like to say in New York City, keep it real, right? So Paper Imperium, by the way, posted on the text that it's great to hear what you have to say, David. That's super informative for all the delegates. So yeah, real quickly, because I know we have another delegate coming up, and it's awesome to see other delegates getting involved. I think this call is super awesome, by the way. I think for as far as strategic happiness, Tim Schuppener and I have spoken about this earlier with regards to merging the core units. I think I said this earlier. I think, from my experience, I can only talk from experience, the greatest t-shirt that I wore that resembles MakerDAO and DAI, but I think most people relate to it more to DAI, is that, I'm not stable across your chest, but my DAI is. I mean, I had the the head CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Near Protocol, take a photograph of it, and I'm sure he's going to use it for Near or their new stablecoin. And he sent it right in front of me to his assistant or something, CMO, whatever. So look, it's marketing genius. I know that was done by, from what I've heard from some foundation marketing team that was around. You might know more about that. But my point is like the branding, man. It's super important. And I know it's a big budget. You know, at that time and point, I believe that Tim Schuppener and I were the two delegate platforms. When I say I, it's 3F Delegate, that voted yes for this, with along with other, you know, OG Maker token owners. And yeah, it was a fine line where we could have agreed with the hawkish folks like Paper and Do. But, you know, we believe that the facilitator of strategic finance is a diehard MakerDAO individual. And you guys know what I'm talking about. You know, Mr. Bourbon himself. And yeah, there's some questions about him, but I'm not going to get into that because I know Du is waiting, and I want to respect this time. So Du, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank
And
you
by the way,
for your.
thank you for joining us. I know that we try to find a decent hour, but we appreciate you joining us. Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to make a comment that, first, an apology for offending some of the committee members. I know that sometimes I can kind of, blunt and harsh in my ways, so apology for that. But I do kind of want to mention that, like, I do understand that, especially Bourbon, he has been a dedicated member, but I do think that we also need to look into efficiency as well, right? Because, and then this is something that I approached before as well. It's like there are ways to try to, make it more efficient and also make, because as you remember, like, I'm not against strategic happiness in the beginning per se, but then when he proposed to increase the budget to be almost like 1 million, and then we still really haven't seen a lot of transparency or accountability that some of the committee members wanted, right? Like, for example, on his budget, there's a part-time that's supposed to help him. Do we know who his or her name is? Like, or like some of the specific receipts and others. So I feel like it's more of a question about, like, my interaction with him is like, okay, like, yes, I understand that there might be a place for him. And then, yes, he has been a dedicated member, but it's also about the fairness, right? Like, we are being harsh for others to, like core units to be very efficient, be very transparent, accountable, how they approach, different matters. But I feel like that we are being very, like, giving too much, leeway. And for me, not only is it the issue of this kind of budget, but also from outside, right? Because we saw both on Twitter and many others, there were a lot of comments about how, Maker is somehow throwing this money there. And, I wouldn't say it's throwing per se, but I can understand that from outside perspective, they might think they were doing this because of those personal connections, which people might perceive as a corruption, right?
Thank you. Thank you, Do. Appreciate that. And in fact, I've reading out the forums, is there something we merge with growth? Is it, Maker just made a comment, repeatedly asked him to get under $500,000 or under, it's, I know that with the budget that came out, there was a lot of comments in the forum about, justification for the expenses, but we appreciate the comments. And I think Frank wants to add to that. I may have hit on a point. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, the MKR vesting, right? I think it's 250 MKR, which a lot of folks are wrapping into the entire budget. That doesn't, if the community, MKR token owners, delegates that are on this call feel like this team is not doing a good enough job, then it can be onboarded before any of that vesting kicks in. So let's not forget that, right? So let's put it on tape that, yeah, it is a pretty large budget, but the vesting part doesn't kick in until after 18 months. So just wanted to point that out.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Appreciate that. Want to be mindful of the time. We do have about 10 minutes left in our call today. And I know Frank, you still got your hand raised. Did you have another?
Yeah. So Paper Imperium, Paper Imperium posted that we in the business of rugging MKR core unit team members. And no, Paper, so I think it's an incentive, right? This is an incentive-driven metaverse workforce, and community members alike, right, who earn source cred delegates who, you know, get paid and die, and hopefully one day, right, Paper, I think you and I can agree, will also get MKR vested. So it's an incentive that if you don't perform, right, if this facilitator, Bourbon, can't perform, then yeah, by all means, I'm with you, Paper. Let's offboard it. Let's get that core unit out of here as fast as we can. So I'm just being brutally honest. Maybe some of the other delegates have a different opinion, but yeah, Raphael, looks like you have your hand up, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, just wanted to say about the Bourbon. Like, I voted against it, but I think from what I read, his payment is basically tied to his performance anyway. So he won't get a lot of money if he doesn't perform, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say, right?
It's all
if he doesn't perform,
MKR, so it depends if the performance ties to the token performance or not. But
right, he still earns a salary. Is that what you're pointing out, Peyton?
correct, but also just that in terms of like how the vesting is structured, like, you know, he offered to cut it off or to keep going. You know, it's not like proportionally tied to performance. It's either you let it keep going.
All right, thank you, Peyton. Yeah, oh, had some hand raised, but they're all down now. So,
yeah, I just want to take a point to, or
yeah,
just a quick beat to just echo what Du is saying. Like, just try to go back, not to like the performance of something, because I mean, what are we going to be measuring? How many T-shirts you hand out? Like, it's more just kind of the transparency and being clear about what you're up to and showing improvement there, I think. And I really want to stress just being a little bit more general, more zoomed out. I think we're starting to get into specific stuff, and I kind of feel like that's not particularly like the best thing to put up on YouTube, let alone like without those folks here to sort of talk through things, right? So I'll take this beat to say, if people do get the chance to see Bourbon in person at the next conference, I think relaying some of those opportunities to be more transparent and you know, help deliver on his mandate is definitely there. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Tim. Just and Peyton, a quick question. As far as process is concerned, you get the MIP. I think these were, I want to say June 22nd and July 7th, when these offboardings were put in. If they relatively close, how long is that process for folks to comment, maybe hold, you know, some discussions with these facilitators? How long do they have for that process, that period of time period? Or how's that go?
So,
yeah, if you go ahead.
Yeah, it is up to proposal office, right? Like, you don't have to submit your MIP as soon as it's ready. Like, maybe they think the community discussion is going, or there's still edits to make, or what have you. But the RFC periods are posted publicly. So for the two most recent offboardings, those did come a day after those cutoffs. So they would not be eligible for the August cycle, but would be eligible for September. I believe the events one though did come in time. So we'll double check them. So basically, at least a month, and on the two most recent ones, like much longer because they just missed the cutoff.
Hey,
Right,
Peyton, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
sorry,
Frank.
Thomas.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
I don't mean to cut you off because we're running out of time here. Real quick, Peyton, what would Gulf Alpha do if there was a signal request posted in the middle of an offboarding asking the community to intervene and like completely disregard what could be interpreted as a silly offboarding? I mean, just humor me here. A silly offboarding put by, you know, a community member that, you know, imagine like protocol engineering is suggested to be offboarded, and everyone's like, "What? Are you nuts? This is bananas. We're wasting our time." Can a signal request override that? Just a question to humor all of us.
No. So the reason like signals need community approval is because they're faster forms of governance, right? With MIPS, it has to be posted for at least a month and then it's voted on for several weeks. So there's a long period for the community to kind of debate and understand that. So that's kind of the protection against MIPS, is that by the time it goes up for vote, if it is truly a silly vote, you should have no worries about it failing.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I know MakerMan, if you were listening, you probably love, you know, some of the techniques I've used in the past to try to stop, you know, signal requests that pass. I think, what was the one that I used, Peyton, that politicians use in the US? I don't know if you remember the name of it. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, I'm blanking now too.
No, not a filibuster. It was something else. It was, never mind. Oh, this is awful.
All the skills up in the sleeves. That's good. All right. Good deal. Well, folks, I know we're getting close to the end here for today's call. Great conversation. And this is exactly what I think our intention for the meetings are, is to come and provide a topic to discuss, talk about the pros, the cons, how we can improve, you know, these processes. And really do appreciate everybody's input as well. Let's continue to talk about this. This is a very important topic for MakerDAO, and we will have this recording posted here soon. Any other parting comments from the folks that are still on?
Yep, right before we end, just wanted to let everyone know I fixed the Google form, so it's accessible, and yeah, for every delegate to go check it out, help us answer it. If you have any questions, let me know, and then we'll just continue to keep digging to help you guys out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arden.
All
Tim?
right. See you all on the other side.
Yeah.
See ya.